Copyright University of Auckland, all rights reserved. The content and delivery of lectures in this course are protected by copyright. Material belonging to others may have been used in these lectures and copied by and solely for the educational purposes of the university under licence. You may record the lectures for the purposes of private study or research, but you may not sell, alter or further reproduce or distribute any part of these lectures to any other person. Failure to comply with the terms of this warning may expose you to legal action for copyright infringement by the copyright owner and/or disciplinary action by the university.
Klakia tātou. E pā e tō mata matu te rangi. Ka haere mai I roto I tēnei huihuinga ki te whakapōta I tō mātou uria mā te rarawa. Nā reire te atua e whakawheta ana mātou mo ngā manaakitanga e heke I hui runga ki tēnei o tātou huihuinga. Ki te whakapōta ia, ki te karangāku ia I nei ngā tūpuna ki te haere mai whakatau I runga te pokowhiwhi o tēnei a Papaarangi. Nā reire te atua manaaki o kia mātou I tēnei wā. Ka maumahara I a mātou nei e hikoikoi ana ki te whakapōle tēnei huarahi. Ka hikoi tonu tēnei o tātou Māori kura I roto I tēnei whare. Ki te pupuri hoki te rākau o ngā tohu e tohungia I tēnei wā. Nā reire te atua, ka pātai tonu I a mātou te āhua humāria I muoto aroro. Ki te haere mai heke iho tō wairua I runga kia tātou. Kia whai tau ana tō mātou mana, tō mātou ihi, tō mātou wanawana I roto I tēnei o tātou whare. Kei ora tonu tō mātou kanuhi ki te kitea tēnei e hi koikoi ana mai ki runga te teitei o tēnei maunga. Nō reira ko tēnei tō mātou ino tia mō kia koe I tēnei rā I runga te ngoi o klaiti tō mātou. Kei whakaora, āmene.
Oh
papatu I raro ai ki te kakau o te hoi. Tātou ko koe māhuhu ki te rangi. He rere ki tu hawai ki he moana, he mānutanga waka. Ka makawera ki te ngakinga te patunga ahu I pakauri ora. Nau mai te wakatawa I tāku e halai a hau ngā hakapala. Maunga rongo ki au e hora ala kei. Au e te riri au e te ruha. Whiria te tuatini he ko tuku whenua e taku whenua hakatau ana ki te tau. Tau mau ai. Whiti rawa. Ki te mea tuatahi e mihi ana ki tō tātou matua nui te rangi. Nāna nei mana ki tō mātou hi koikoi I roto I tēnei o tātou huiwinga. Nā reire Gloria tana ingoa. Ki te tuarua e mihi ki ngā mate hinga atu I ngā marae maha. Nā reire haere hoki atu ki te wā kāinga. Kei mau mahara I a māta kei wainganui I a koutou I roto I ngā tupuna mairano. Nā reire haere hoki atu. Hoki mai I runga ki tēnei o tātou kaupapa. Ki te whakapōta e hoki te uri o te aroa. Nā reira e te raroa. Haere mai I roto e tēnei āhua. Ko te āhua kia kite I a mātou tēnei e tūtū mai ki te teitei o tō tātou maunga. Nā reira haere mai kei mōhio ko wai e whakahuahua tēnei o tātou huarahi mo tēnei kaupapa, no ona tūpuna e whakahuahua tēnei. Mai ki te mōhio ko ēnei ngā moimoia o tōna tūpuna. Haere koe ki te manaki hoki tō mātou tamariki mokopuna, āla ngā whānau, ngā haku, ngā iwi katoa, āla ko ngā hunga o tēnei o Aotearoa. Haere mai. E te tūmaki e Papaarangi. E mōhio I a hau te tangi o tō koutou tūpuna. Te mōhio ka haere mai pupuri hoki te rākau. Kei arehi ngā kaupapa I roto I tēnei o tātou kura. Haere mai. Kei putāke ngā wawata me tō mātou moimoia o enei e noho mai I muri ia koe. Tēnei no ngā tauira I roto I tō koutou whare. Nā reire kei mōhio e hara nei tēnei kaupapa e tuana ko te mea nui e rere haere tana kōrero mai ki te heke iho ngā manakitanga o tana tūpuna I runga ki rātou kei ora tonu I a tātou I tēnei rā. O ti rā kia koutou rā. Ngā mātā waka o tēnei o Aotearoa. Haere mai. E mōhio I a mātou nei e mahi ana ki te taha o tēnei. Ka haere mai ki te tūtaki. Kei te whakamana āla kei takahia tō wairua I roto I tēnei āhuatanga. Ko te āhuatanga ka hāpai tonu tēnei o tātou rangatira ki te wāhi e hara nei e mārei kura ko te tino kaupapa e ahorangi mo tēnei o tātou whare. Nā reira haere mai. Kore e kumero tēnei o tōku nei koro e te raroa e mihi ana kia koutou ki te haere mai o ti rā ki te tangi hoki tēnei o tātou kuia e mihi ana kia koe ki te tangi kei mōhio ko e nei ngā whakamana ki te hikoikoi ana I muri kua kia koe. Kei mōhio ka whakawāte hoki te wā ki te hikoikoi tēnei o tātou tuāhine te rangatira te tūmohi katoa. O ti rā e mihi ana kia koe e te matua e John ki te haere mai tata hoki ki aia kei mōhio koe ko tāi te wā ki te whakapuare te kuaha. Ka karanga hoki tēnei haere mai I roto I te āhuru mōwai o tēnei whare, te whare o te rongoronga o enei. O ti rā ki te hikoikoi ana e mihi ana kia koe e Colin ki te haere mai tūtaki I a mātou kei mōhio tō hitori ki te whakamana tō mātou rana I roto I tēnei o tātou kura. Haere mai. Kore kumero tēnei o tōku nei kōrero I tēnei wā tēnā koutou. Kia ora hui mai tātou. E tātou hono, rātou te hingamate kia rātou, ka piti hono tātou te kani o leo, hui mai nei i tēnei wā, tēnā koutou, kia tau, ka huri reo te rākau kia hoi.
Ari koe hoki anga ko koe tātu tuatai ka tangu i te apumara mo te hāhi katorika tapu ti hei mauniora. Ka te ake, tautoko ana rā ngā kupu i whakatua ki kia rapata wairua ki kia tātou matu nui te rangi. Hei pikinga, hei hekinga mo te hungo ko poto ki te pō. Koe no rai te matua nā rai tuku atu, ngā whakamuemeti, ngā whakapētai, nā awanu hoki i kohi wā tātou kāro, wā tātou tumanaku, wā tātou wawata. Tēnei kaupapa e ka hui nei a tātou kia aru atu aia wā ahuatanga katoa ki moi te aroaro te atua kia rongo aia ki te kakaraki roto i tēnei huinga. Nā reire tautoko ana ngā kupu, nā rai tuku atu, hei turareka kia rongo ai te atua tēnei kaupapa e ka haere te ana e tātou. Koe no rai pā nau te kroria rire hau pai mārire. Ka te tangi atu ana rā ki te hunga ko whai wāhira ki tō tātou kaupapa i te rānei. Rātou e a whio ana kai wangi i a tātou. Rātou i haria e te hunga kua takatū mai ki roto i tō tātou pohiri ki runga i o rātou pukahiwi. Rātou ki runga ake i o koutou pukahiwi. O tātou mate katoa, tēnei ka tangi, tēnei ka poroaki, tēnei ka whakamihi. Ka te ake, ngunguru te pō, ngunguru te ao. Ko rātou te hunga ka poto ki te pō, ko tātou te hunga kei tēnei au kiko, i hiko i haere nei runga i te mato te whenua, nā rira tēnā tātou. Kāti, e mihi ana ki te kaupapa o te pō, a rā ko te pōhiri, o tēnei puhi ariki, no roto te raroa kaiwhare, a kua tai mai te pō nei. Raroa kaiwhare, i putera te ingoa, muri mai te haeretanga, o te ope taua, o te raroa ki roto kaipara. Taua, ope taua rā, na taru, me ngā rangatira o taua wā i arahi ki roto kaipara. Hei utu i te mate o te ripo, te taingāke ki runga kaipara, a tai, ka putu te kōrero i te tahiunga kui o reira a rā, a te toko, ka tahi anō ka kairaroa koutou. Kāti ko tai mai te raroa. Hei arahi nei, tō tātou rangatira, ki roto i te whare. Hei kawera i tō tātou whaia ki roto i tō tātou kura nei, āna te kura āia i pakatū ki tēnei tūranga, hei ahorangi, mo te kura whakaora tangata. Nā reira mihi mai ki āia, pohiritia mai tēnei paunamu, pohiritia mai tēnei rangatira, e mau nei te kākahu kiwi e te ahiahi nei. Mihi mai kia tinana waka. Mihi mai kia tarakea maunga. Mihi mai ki te marae o mā tihetie. Tū moana whare, ringa rau o te ākau, punakai, hāto hemi, whare karakia. Maunga hiona, wāhi tapu. Nō reira mihi mai ki aia. Me tana whāmere, o no hoa, ngā rangatira o te motu, ka tai mai tēnei ahiahi. Aia, i hua rā i tōna tupuna ariki, a ātama Papaarangi. Te ringa tuatahi, no roto, te tau Māori, te hoko keha, i pātu, ki kia pihopo pumapāria, tana tainga ki roto hoki anga whakapau karakia. Mihi mai ki te āhua o tōna tupuna, ko makare mai ki runga i aia. Mihi mai nei ki tane ingoa, i hua rā aia i tawa tino ariki no roto hoki anga. Mihi mai ki tēnei rangatira mau moko kauai. Mihi mai ki aia me ona pukenga mano, ona tini tohu mātauranga, tana tū ki roto i te ao Māori, tana arero wepu, wana ni hokoi, tana ringa whakamārie, tana ringa meke, ne mea. Kāti, mihi mai ki aia. Te hunga katoa, ko tai mai ki ona taha. Ka kitea nei, te tamaiti a rangi nui woka i te ahehi nei. Ka kitea nei, a moana, i roto i tēnei kāhui, te ahiahi nei. Pai no rā, ka ki te hoki, tō tātou matua, a kauna me rā, ko hoki mai ki taka mana i tēnei kaupapa nui. Pai no rā mihi mai, ki ngā mana e ngunguru nei, te ihi e papi nei i tēnei hunga, ko haria mai nei e māua ko tō tātou rangatira a te waiora. Pea no ranga kai whakakapi tūranga kei roti a koutou. Te whai kōrero tuatahi, tainui waka, i humatao, e doi, e kōrero kuturi pranga mai. A koe rea te matua, e rauri, mihi mai whakatauria mai rā, e ne hunga koutou, e noho nei ki te rapito te whare. Te mana kau mātua, o tēnei kuro o tātou, e rere tēnā koutou. E pupuri nei te Māori, o tēnei kuro, no roto nei te whare wānanga o tāmaki makaurau. A nei rā, hoki o ngā whakapau karakia, e kawe nei o hoki o ngā whakapau karakia ki roto i te whare. Tēnei o panguru, kai tūtai, wai koi, kau e kata ki te ingoa kai tūtai nā. Te waiariki, Ngāti te Māra, te whānau moko, te whānau mai, Ngāti Tamatea, Motu Ti, Kaini Ti noa kuaronga hea. Ko riro māku te honore, hei pakautu ngā mihi nā ko tautai ki runga i tō tātou kuhiariki, a Papaarangi. Pai no rā, horakau au hiana, kia kongiai wa tātou kōtore, i te roa te noho, kei hohamai rā koutou kia, no rira tēnā koutou, e te whaia, e pax, sāka Māori koe. E nā kupu kōroa te kāinga mō ngā hunga pēnei a koe, e wahine krewa koe, e wahine sāka Māori koe. Nō reira huri tō tātou, whare koa huri nei he pātaka kohi tāngata, he pātaka kohi koiwa, he pātaka kohi roimata, mota hunga korirua tiki tua te ārai. Nō reira tāpē tau nei, tēnā tātou, kia ora hui mai a tātou. Kia ora ngā pohi, Ngāti whatua, te au Māori, te rarawa, me Ngāti kahu, ere mana iwi, kua huri te roheo, taitokera, karanga hoki ana, ki o ta Māoriki,
We're going to change your job description to being the singer for the whole 3,000 of us. The pay is not as big, but we enjoy your kōrero anyway. Kia ora tātou. We'll now turn the time over to Professor John, and he will be able to lead us from here on. Kia ora.
E nā mana, e nā reo, e nā hawaii whā, e ti iti, e te rahi, e nā matuaka o nā tūpo ita u te ao. Hiki mai, kaki mai, nau mai, haere mai, ki tēnei o nā wananga. Whakatau mai, tēnā koutou katoa. Good evening, I'm John Fraser, I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Medical and Health Sciences, and it's a warm welcome to everybody. It's our second inaugural lecture for 2018. 2018 is a special year. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary, and I believe tonight's lecture is most appropriate for our 50th celebration. It's my pleasure to warmly welcome our kamatua, whānau, colleagues, friends, families, one and all who have come along tonight to celebrate. For those who are new to an inaugural lecture, I'd like to explain the importance of what they are and why we consider them as a university and a faculty to be the highlight of our academic year. So the process of university inauguration serves two purposes. One is an expression of acknowledgement and welcome, a reception for new professors joining their the elite circle within the university's highest rank, the professoriate. The second is to showcase the subject and the story of the new professor, their maiden lecture as an esteemed and eminent academic at the University of Auckland, and of course the global academic community. The inaugural lecture series is a highlight of our academic calendar, and this year we acknowledge 4 new professors. Academic inauguration is actually a tradition that dates back to medieval times, when universities were essentially an elite live-in men's club for thinkers. In those times, inauguration into the club was a public event, unashamedly designed to impress upon the public, the rich and rich benefactors, the need for their continued patronage, to keep the club in the lifestyle that they believe they should be afforded because of their intelligence. Professors were chosen as much for their financial worthiness as for their intellectual capacity. And one tradition was that newly elected professors had to publicly profess their knowledge while entertaining the rest of their colleagues at their own expense for the duration of the inauguration period, a sort of rite of passage. Things haven't changed much, but Papaarangi, these days we pay for it. Elevation to the rank of professor is a very serious process, and for many it represents the pinnacle of academic achievement after decades of working as teacher, mentor, researcher, and providing service to local and international communities. Selection process is long and involves an intense scrutiny by other senior colleagues who seek advice from international peers to confirm that the appointee meets the rank of international eminence in their chosen field. Inaugural lectures are warmly celebrated by our faculty, and they offer a wonderful opportunity for colleagues, family and friends to acknowledge their new rank and to learn about the journey that has led to their academic success, the milestones, decisions and the mentors who have helped steer their path. Tonight it is my very great pleasure to introduce Professor Papaarangi Reid. Papaarangi is our Tumuaki, Deputy Dean Māori and Head of Tukupuenga Hauaroa Māori, who will deliver her inaugural lecture tonight on politics, power and positionality, prioritising Māori health. But first, it is my very great pleasure to welcome back Emeritus Professor Colin Mantell to provide a formal introduction. Colin.
I have never been at a collection, such a fine collection as the people sitting here tonight, to honour Papaarangi. And I guess I'm here because I've known Papaarangi for at least 40 years. I remember her fondly right at the beginning of her medical training. I remember her as a house surgeon, as a student, as a house surgeon. She even did some obstetrics and gynecology at one stage, and then into public health, where her future clearly lies. I've recently looked at Papaarangi's CV, and there are 14 pages of CV, each page with about 20 sightings on it of something famous and important that Papaarangi has done. You add all that up, that is at least 14 years good work. And she's been doing this for a long, long time, making these major contributions. This night is particularly important for Papaarangi and significant for me. And it's not with a lot of pleasure that I say this, but Papaarangi's appointment as professor and giving this inaugural lecture is the first appointment of a Māori professor at this school in the last 40 years. looked at Papaarangi's CV, there seemed to be 3 separate clusters of the interests and things she does, which I think are going to be reflected in the talk that she's giving today. The first was the politics of research. There was a whole cluster of papers and ideas about that, about how to run research for Māori, about what is important, about how to deal with nationwide surveys that involved Māori as patients. And she, of course, is well known for that. But what she is probably best known for is the second clustering, and that is her work and leadership in Indigenous health. Papaarangi has been part of the leadership of Indigenous health in Australia, in Hawaii, in Canada, in America, and there are other places as well, and in the Pacific Islands, where her leadership has been just most remarkable and forthright, I might say. I thought that her, when she was the second segment that I talked about of her research was what I called public awakening, and this, of course, she is very good at, even although for a lot of the time the public wanted to not be awakened and wanted to stay asleep. And then the third clustering was to do with education, and Māori education, and the contribution that Papaarangi and her team have made is that they have turned it from a piecemeal education experience into a science of education for Indigenous, and in our case Māori and Pacific students. What sort of things are successful? Where does the help need to come? What does the school need to do to adjust to make it successful? And as such, I would say that we now have one or two, either the first or second most outstanding affirmative action program in the whole of the world. Can you imagine, even as recently as a decade ago, the huge number of Māori graduates that have been under Papaarangi's tutelage and under her care year by year? The numbers of Māori and Pacific students graduating are unheard of, undreamed of, as recently as a decade ago. And for this, I want to... For this, I want to personally thank Papaarangi for the huge contribution that she has made there. And I think tonight moulds all of these 3 sections together in her talk. The thing that I remember most about Papaarangi is her fearlessness and her courage right through her whole career. And I guess we're going to see some examples of that tonight. Papaarangi, welcome. Please give your lecture.
Huri noa te whare nei, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Te mea tuatahi matua tēnā koe mo tō karakia, mo tō mihi mahana kia tātou I tēnei wā. Nō reira, ka nui te mihi kia koutou. Tēnā koutou hoki I raro I te mana o Ngāti Whātua, o Rākei, me nā iwi o tēnei rohe ātāhua. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's a bit nerve-wracking, but I'll get through it. Mainly, you guys must be a really boring lot, because I know you really just want to be at home watching MasterChef or something like that. So thank you for getting out of your slippers and coming along to support. What a boring lot we are. Hang on, I'm going to drive the machine, get back into my comfort zone. So, ko waia hau, ko tarakeha tōku maunga, ko hokianga whakapau karakia te wahapū, ko te ākau te moana, ko tinana te waka, ko te raroa tōku iwi, ko tāo Māui tōku hapū, ko mātihitihi tōku marae, ko Papaarangi ri tōku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou. And in case you were wondering where Jeremy comes from, it's before you get to this place, which is the Mitimiti in the Hokianga. Now, so it's been a big dilemma what to talk about tonight. And I've listened with some interest to the kōrero because I was torn between, I had a dilemma between, do I have a nice, comfortable jaunt down memory lane and tell some good stories, or do I, go back to basics, get a bit rad, and talk about things and people that have influenced my path, my thinking, and my work. So guess what? We're going with number 2. Some of you will know that my language is sometimes colourful, and there will be words used that begin with R. In this school, it's usually reflection, that is the swear word beginning with R. But now, tonight, it's racism. And the C word, colonisation, just in case you were worried. But hopefully you expected that. The thing about Mitimiti, I'm told, is that a strong westerly wind blows, and the people from there are known to lean a bit. And so you will understand that when I lean a bit to one side or the other, usually left, it's to be expected. I didn't grow up in Mitimiti. I grew up in a place called Whakapara, where my father had a rehab farm block after the war. I had a Māori father and an English war bride as my mother. We were a happy family. There were 6 children. And I was blessed with hard-working parents. We worked on a dairy farm, and that afforded me 2 things. Firstly, I knew never, ever date a farmer. Because I was going out of there and not coming back. And the second thing is, I can smell BS from miles away. So our parents were committed to education, and all of us 6 children had some form of tertiary education, and mine, of course, was the longest, as I dilly-dallied through free education in those days, don't blow it, although Mum did keep working till I finished medicine. As I dilly-dallied through science, medicine, and then some postgraduate education. I think it was Martin Luther King who said the cost of education pales into insignificance compared to the cost of ignorance. And I think that's an important lesson for us to think about as financial barriers to education surround us. There's a blast from the past. Where's David? So, I'm sorry, Stuart, I didn't have an earlier one where you would have been captured in the early days of MAPAS. But I put this one in, I loved it because, David, your carvings are there. And they still remain with us with love in our faculty today. Also in the picture in the centre is Associate Professor Sue Kringle. There's me hiding at the back. Stuart's sister Wendy. And Russell Blakelock's daughter graduated last year or the year before. Ted Edwards, is it Ted? Ted Hughes is an anaesthetist, so the anaesthetists among us will know who he is, and I can't for the life of me remember the other fella. But you get that, I'll put it down to ageing. I made some notes, gosh. I enjoyed medicine and I loved being part of MAPAS because at that stage I was the only Māori or Pacific student in my class, as was David. Times have changed. I loved being a doctor, and some colleagues of my early years who were my registrars are now my academic colleagues. So big shout out to Leslie and to Mark, a few others who I see around. Oh God, he remembers. I wasn't a good doctor. I took a long time being a house surgeon to learn medicine. But at the same time as I was learning medicine, I was also learning about life. It was an interesting time to be a student with the Land March, with Bastion Point, and during my 6th year, of course, the Springbok tour. And a number in my class, we tried one protest, maybe two, and then we decided to join the medical squad because it was a bit hard out in the front line. And we were really sookie bubbers, that's why we were at university. But I was very much also taken with feminism, and David's wife, Puhi, dragged me along to the Māori Women's Movement meetings, and we had a really interesting time. And I learnt so much, possibly more than what I learnt at medical school, about women's rights, about feminism, about a different way of viewing the world. And one thing that has stuck with me all along was a part of a speech Donna Awatiri gave at that time. And she said, "I dream of a time when it's safe to be born a Māori girl." And I've used that quote, and I take it now when I think about inequities, and I also dream of a time when it's safe to be born an Indigenous child. So, at the same time, and this is a quote that Elena taught me, at the same time it was an interesting time in New Zealand's history where we were developing an awareness of the Treaty of Waitangi. And the deep inertia our country was in about the treaty. And that was the 80s and 90s. And I was interested when I came across some work that had been done. I wonder how much we have changed in terms of our knowledge and engagement with the founding document of our nation. In 2004, there was an awareness study of New Zealanders in terms of the treaty, where they interviewed 750 adults. Only a little over half knew a lot or a fair amount about the treaty. And of them, 45% of them, only half of them wanted to know more. Nearly half knew not much or hardly anything, and only a quarter of them wanted to know more. And I struggled with this when I looked at the 53% who knew a lot or a fair amount, that really only a third knew that the treaty was signed in 1840. So I thought their reflection about their knowledge wasn't good. So I moved somewhat from clinical medicine, and I got a bit interested in looking at prevention. And it was a really interesting time. There was a big scrap going on. Yes, I can see you smiling, Gwen. Because Gwen was part of that scrap too. There was a scrap happening between what is public health, what is the old public health, which was very much about poos and wheeze outbreaks and about health education, telling people what they should do, and monitoring restaurants, etc. And then there was the new public health, which included as part of it very much a sense of community development was part of it. And leading the radicalism, my favourite, was health promotion. And it was in the lead up to the Ottawa Charter when health promotion became very broad, almost think of something that's going to be really good for anything from your health to your mindfulness, and we'll call it health promotion. So we started thinking laterally about what would Māori health promotion look like. How can we do something rad in health promotion? How can we do anti-colonial health promotion? Some of my first voyages into health promotion was at the behest of Murray Logerson. And, God save a girl from Te Raroa who can't help a challenge. And Murray Logerson challenged me to do something about Māori and tobacco control. But I wasn't that interested in just being another person telling people off. And so we started doing work, and included in that we produced 2 books. And I want to acknowledge Gwen for the support that she gave when she was with Te Hotu Manua Māori for those 2 books. And they were in the 90s, so we're talking a little way back. At the same time, I was also involved in a project called the Waiora Project, which many of you wouldn't have been born at that time, in the mid-80s. Again, it was radical health promotion, where colleagues gave a contract for some work to be done for Māori project to be done in health promotion. Half of the project was actually producing 4 television programs, all in music, all in Te Reo Māori. And that was our kaupapa. Promote Māori, promote Te Reo, and we will promote whānau, we will promote wairua, we will promote getting together and being in a positive space. But most of all, it was promoting the right of Māori to be Māori. And at times there were health promotion messages, traditional health promotion messages in that, in those sessions, but basically it was about being Māori, yay. And at the same time, I worked part-time for with the Ministry of Health, and at that time the Ministry of Māori Affairs was changing. A woman called Denise Meseta was working in Manatū Māori at that time, and she was doing a project on assisted reproductive technology. What is the singular Māori view on perspective sometimes, not reality, but won't go there, stop, view on assisted reproductive technology. And so we talked about the right of a child to its whakapapa. And I want to acknowledge early initiators, early innovators. So when we spoke to fertility associates, we said, you shouldn't be actually doing anonymous donation of gametes, because that's problematic in Māori terms. And blow me down, they took it on board, and they became the first group in the world that stopped doing anonymous donation of gametes and started a process of bringing families together with other families who wanted to donate gametes with people who needed to be recipients of gametes. So I want to acknowledge the people who took up the challenge and listened to what was right for Māori and did that. So I acknowledge fertility associates in that work. Now, I decided to work part-time at the Wellington School of Medicine. And I've got a little pointer here. So, is it going to go? No. Okay, so up there on the left, you'll see a typical, for its time, Department of Medicine. Apologies, Philippa. And you'll see on the left lower corner, there's someone who looks like they don't really belong in the Department of Medicine. One of these people does not belong. And but I really appreciated Eru Pomare's mentorship at that time, and the fact that he probably used what we now call HOD accounts, or soon to change, and hired me part-time to help with the production of the tobacco control work. Luckily, I was able to escape, and luckily for them, and they thought so too, I was able to escape the Department of Medicine. Bridget, I can see you there too. Can you see yourself? And we began a research centre, Te Roku Rangahau Hauora. Well, it was Te Pūmanawa Hauora initially, but it became Te Roku Rangahau Hauora at Eru Pomare. And I spent many happy and I think productive years there. Of the work that I'm most proud of that we did with much support at the Eru Pomare Centre was work around the classification of ethnicity based on the imperative that we have the right to be counted as Māori, as Indigenous, and we demand that right to be counted in our own land. It came as a bit of a flash when, in terms of death certificates, when we found out that Māori were dying and being counted on their death certificate as Pākehā. And an elder, Linda Smith's father, said to me, "Gosh, that's the final colonisation." And it's only when someone puts it in such clear terms that you know you've got it. The work on the classification of ethnicity, we must pay homage to Vera and Sophie Keefe, who it was Vera being so closely engaged with Sophie, Auntie Sophie, who watched her when she changed her the way in which she answered the census, when a change in the census question came in, that we knew that we should do further study on the classification of ethnicity. So quite a large body of work on the classification of ethnicity, and I have to say it's something that we must keep our eye on, because at every turn, it's usually Stats New Zealand or others are trying to undermine that. The right to have a powerful voice. I object to us being a minority in surveys which want to examine New Zealand's whatever, whatever the incidence or prevalences of whatever. I don't want to be a minority in that. I want us, with our inequities, to be a powerful voice in that research. And I want, again, mana whakamārama, the process of equal explanatory power was another piece of work that came out of the Eru Pomare Centre. It wasn't popular. Once we started talking about inequities, all of a sudden, people started going, "Oh, I don't like us talking negative things about Māori." And there was a backlash to us talking about equity. And people didn't like to be labelled as bad, sad or mad, and so we could understand that. But we had to work out how do we be meaningful in research and not be framed in this deficit way. And this deliberate framing of Māori in non-deficit ways in our research and in statistics became another part of our track record. With our colleagues at Te Kete Hauora, we were quite strong in pushing for treaty compliance for Crown-funded agencies, whether they be DHBs or research agencies. And I want to acknowledge Teresa and her work in Te Kete Hauora and over all those years. We needed to our right to be part of the solution and to have our interventions used and supported. And I want to acknowledge David and his intervention, the wahakura, for the prevention of SIDS. But most of all, it's come to a point where we have the right to name racism. And there's a little bit more on that later. So yeah, I had a powerful time. And I had a couple of kids during that time too, but we mentioned them at the end. They get a picture at the end. Since moving here, I've been fascinated and also nurtured to think about positionality. I've been interested in taking students along a thinking journey about how we can see things differently and how we have many truths. And we talk about mountaintops and how they might see something from their mountaintop, which is the same scene, the same marae, but what they see from their mountaintop is different from what I see from my mountaintop, because what they see in their foreground is the background in mine, and vice versa. Furthermore, I get them to own the fact that just like me on my mountaintop, I've got baggage. We're all radical feminists, or we're all something. You know, I hang out with and I get media about, and I enjoy the company of people who think like me, and so we have mores and values and ways of looking at the world on our mountaintop, and in doing so, it colours how we see what's happening in the data or what's happening in the view in front of us. So if we get students to own that, then we say, well, that is your theoretical positioning, that is your positionality. And once you own it, that means that you own some bias, because how you see the data in front of you, because it's not, the data doesn't speak for itself, we speak for it, how we see it means that will be reflected in our research, because we will ask different questions. We will want to do the research in different ways. And this is particularly true in medical sciences. We were a little bit biased, and we think that we can, just by controlling the method, we can control the methodology and neutralise the theoretical positioning. But I don't really think that's true. Now, I said we were going to talk about the C word, and here we are. Oops, Colonisation is a project that's deeply political, religious, economic, but it's also a scientific project. When Cook and Banks came to the country, they claimed knowledge and ways of knowing, and it was as much about science as it was about land and natural resources. The colonisers became discoverers. And as Eddie Jury once noted, we didn't even know we were lost. They became collectors, both of material and of knowledge. They became knowers and authorities, owners and keepers of things removed from context and culture. And as health and social scientists, as we bind ourselves to evidence, we need to critique or reflect on this evidence and its underlying assumptions. Colonisation is not a historical event, but a particular positioning with a number of critical features that had both a legacy and a means of self-perpetuation. It is problematic to think colonisation was over last century, or the one before. Okay? It has a legacy, and it's self-perpetuating. Racism is the necessary partner to colonisation. It enabled people to come here and believe that they have the right to take things. And we must name it, we must face racism, and we must be brave enough to address it. Truth-telling is the first stage and essential prerequisite to reconciliation. So for me, there's 3 parts to understanding Māori health. Firstly, we must understand that Māori are distributed differently by poverty and deprivation. And some of this, most of it, is the historical impact of colonisation. Secondly, Māori have differential outcomes, even at the same levels of deprivation. And because of this, we have differential access to the social determinants of health. And finally, we have differential quality of access and service in health services and other services. This means we get differential treatment, and we've got to understand explicit and implicit bias. Now, in case you don't believe me, even though these are old graphs, you can see here that Māori are more likely to be residing in the most deprived deciles if we use NZD. And Pākehā are privileged. And if we look at death rates by DEP, we can see as internationally death rates increase with increasing deprivation. Māori rates are higher at all levels of DEP. So we know that colonisation internationally has been recognised as causing historic trauma, and that historic trauma is embodied. But there's something about it, something that when we look at this over time, while we've been collecting NZD, the ratios haven't changed. What keeps them there? Why don't they tend towards the mean? And we have to know that the live issue, the thing that keeps and mediates the continuation of the differential distribution is racism. It also plays out in differential outcomes at the same levels of deprivation, and it plays out in how we think about our patients as they come for treatment. What's interesting to me is that as well-meaning health professionals, we have spent a lot of time and energy and resources trying to do something about the differential quality of access and outcomes for Māori. We have worked very hard and with some success. However, we have put David single-handedly has flooded South Auckland with amoxil to get rid of rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease. But we all know that we need to go back further to improve housing, to improve poverty, and to stop Māori being differentially distributed into poverty to really change those outcomes. So I want us to think history, and I want us to be able to say the R word, racism, out loud. I asked this young man for a picture the other day at the last Friday at the protest, and he was very pleased to be part of my lecture tonight. But I just wanted to note the wise words of Sir Michael Marmot, who said, "The opposite of poverty is not wealth, it's actually justice." So are we as staff, as well informed as our students? Are we New Zealanders who are well informed, critically thinking, aware of our shared history, knowledgeable about the Treaty of Waitangi, and competent in Māori settings? You know, the silent question is, if not, why not? But we should be. We owe it to ourselves and we owe it to our children. Are we aware of how the inequities we currently see, are we aware of how they were caused, how they're maintained, and how we can mitigate them? Do we, as researchers and health workers, know that we are active participants in these statistics? And bringing here, Irihāpiti, Ramsden, are we culturally safe? We should talk about the future. There's so much critical work to do in health. We're trying to avert a climate catastrophe. There's evolving epidemics. You only have to walk down the street to see poverty, and we know the social determinants of health need to be addressed. We've got developing technologies, and we need to ensure that ethical frameworks stay ahead of those developments, or sometimes even halt them. We have population challenges. We have challenges with the cost and reach of healthcare, and we have inequities between and within nations, especially for marginalised peoples. And we have the ongoing march of globalisation and neoliberal economics. So, that's enough to get us going, isn't it? But I really think that an Indigenous view on relationality has much to offer. And I acknowledge Karina Walters in her talk when she talks about Indigenous relationality is important if we want to consider our environment, if we want to consider our landscapes, the landscapes we live in, the geographical landscapes and what that means in terms of people moving, the geopolitical landscape, and the what was the other good sign the other night? Alt-right delete. I think that was it. As well as the landscape of ethical and technological landscapes. The Indigenous view on relationality is also important through time. Thank you for calming me with the thought that my ancestors are with us tonight. But most important, we need to think about our future generations in a real way and plan for a better future for them. And the Indigenous view on relationality also extends to our relationships with each other. So, yep. See, I told you I'd get a picture of my kids. So I'm committed to a better future for our mokopuna. And I'm proud of our work to date. I'm privileged to be part of all of your lives. There's so much more for us to do. E hara taku tō te tō takitahi, engari he tō takitini. I've been very privileged to be influenced by some inspirational thought leaders, some of whom are here and some of whom have passed away. To be born at a time in history when I was able to partake in great learning moments. And to work in teams of fantastic, including current past teams of fantastic, energetic and innovative people who believe in the rights of tangata whenua in Aotearoa and who love our people. To be guided by patient kaumātua and to be loved by my family. Ngā mihi mahana kia tātou katoa. Kia ora.
Carita!
tangata me tūrake atu ki tangata tai. Ahura tangata tai me tūrake atu ki tangata uta. Pera hoki rā te korapē nui, te korapē roto ai au toi awa. Whakamau tama i te ara. Whakamau tama i te ara ko tū, ko rongo, ko tama i ara kauraka tama. I tuka i te tāwhanga whangai putanāri ki no rongo. Ki te ata tau i te mai e. Mai te tupua, mai te tawhito. I haere mai koe i whea, i haere mai koe i tū whako i tinaku, i tū whako i te rangi. O reira tēnei taonga whātungia kia koe. Tō wāriki. Papaarangi. Papaarangi. Kia rā. E Papaarangi e mehena kia koe ki te whakapuare tēnei o tātou whakaahua kei whai hohonu tō mātou whakaaro o ngā kaupapa e tipu ake i ngā whakatupuranga i roto i tēnei o tātou whare. Nā reira mehena kia koe mo tēnā ai rā ka mua hio i a hau te kāhui āriki e haere mai ki te tautoko kia koe nāna rātou o rangatira e whakarangatira tēnei o tātou kōrero nō reira tēnā koe nā ka kraki a tātou. E pāia tō mātou mutu te rangi. Ko otia tō mātou tūranga i konei ki te kitea tō mātou āriki Papaarangi no te raroa. Ki te haere mai konei ki te whāki tonu te mana o tērā iwi. Nā reire e te atua e whakawheta ana mātou ki te whakalongo ngā kōrero i te teitei o te maunga kei whāngaia tērā kōrero ki te torotoro i tēnei wāhi, i tērā wāhi e a tātou katoa. Nā reire te aki tonu i a mātou i enei, ka hiki tonu i enei whakaaro e pataake iaia i mō kia mātou. Kia whai tūmana kō, kia whai kitea i a mātou, ngā moimoi a mo ngā te māranga o tō mātou whakatupuranga i haere i runga ki tēnei o tātou kaupapa. Grateful to have spent this night being able to listen, consider the views of another rangatira who brings an opportunity for us to provide the necessary hope for people of our culture, the Māori culture, and also for all those who have been able to have parents of different ethnicities, that it allows us to open the doors for many and provide a greater hope and a greater future for all those whom we have the opportunity to rub shoulders with. We're thankful for the venue that has been provided, and I know we are about to go and lift the tapu with whakanoa, the tapu of this particular occasion. We're thankful and grateful for the opportunity we have not only to be educated, but to allow us to be able to provide that to the rest of the rising generation, giving great hope to the existence and the continuance of our ethnicities here in New Zealand and abroad. Nā reire te atua, ko tēnei tō mātou honore kia koe ki te mōhio, i roto i tō wairua kia whai manaki i a mātou, ki te kitea ngā kanuhi, ki te ora tonu tō mātou tamariki e hi koikoi ana i runga ngā huarahi hakawhānui. Nā ko tēnei tō mātou inoi tia mō kia koe i tēnei rā i runga te ngui o karaiti tō mātou kaiwhakaora. Āmene. Just a quick note, we're going to move and we'll invite Te Raroa to take their iwi out, and we will meet in there and have a kapa and spend some time together. It is also a time for us. There's a lot who have been associated with the development, as you've seen, with Papaarangi, an opportunity to mihi at that particular occasion. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora hui mai tātou. Hai te maumahara ui rā kōrero te wāhira o hokianga. Tahi ka kata i a hui tērā mā, tērā reo ki tāke. Ka rata sīra nei. Sīra mai. Tēnā ka hoki anai ki te kāna te higa mai nei sa te tāka ākara te te reo o rea.
Māori te kōrero kāne. Kōrero kēne.